Welcome to another explainer from the For the Wise podcast. Do us a quick favor and hit like, comment, share, and subscribe for more of these deep dives. All right, today we're exploring a really profound psychological dynamic, the hidden costs of empathy. Ever wonder why the people who care the absolute most often find themselves at the biggest disadvantage? Well, let's get into it.
So evolutionary biologist Robert Trivers calls this exact phenomenon the cost of virtue. Think about it like this. Imagine you give a coworker the benefit of the doubt on a shared project, right? Only for them to turn around and take all the credit in front of your boss. It turns out a thoughtful person's conscience, their innate sense of fairness, and their deep investment in relationships can actually put them at a severe disadvantage when they're dealing with someone adversarial. Being pro-social and moral can literally be outcompeted by someone who's just willing to exploit those exact traits.
Which brings us right to part one, the empathy asymmetry.
In this asymmetry, we see what behavioral experts call the nothing-to-lose dynamic. This is where exploitative individuals just operate completely unbothered by guilt or social pushback. And man, this creates a massive handicap for the thoughtful person. First, you've got over-accommodation. Trying so hard to be reasonable and see their side that it actually just enables their bad behavior to escalate. Second, there are huge delays in boundary setting. You want to be fair, so you're thinking, oh, maybe they just had a bad day, right? And third, you end up carrying this massive cognitive load. You're trying to manage your own emotions while constantly anticipating theirs. And honestly, it is just completely exhausting.
That exhaustion leads us to part two, the vulnerability trap.
So when we zoom in from general interactions to intimate relationships, this asymmetry gets incredibly dangerous. Basically, empathic repair gets weaponized as leverage. Let's say you tell your partner, hey, I'm sorry I overreacted, because you're trying to fix a shared problem. But a problematic partner, they don't reciprocate that at all. They just look at you and say, see, even you admit you're the problem. They literally take your self-reflection and use it as ammunition against you. This whole dynamic creates what psychologist Lundy Banforth calls a lopsided moral economy. On one side of the scale, you've got the empathic person carrying all the emotional labor, tracking moods, walking on eggshells, constantly smoothing over tensions. But on the other side, the problematic partner avoids introspection entirely. They externalize all the blame onto you, and they retaliate the second they're challenged. Ultimately, abuse in this context is fundamentally about maintaining control through this exact calculated imbalance.
And living like that takes us to part three, the neurobiological toll.
Because living in this lopsided economy isn't just emotionally tiring, your actual physical body absorbs the shock. Your nervous system starts treating this emotional asymmetry like a literal physical threat, which spikes your cortisol. This chronic exposure completely dysregulates your body and keeps you stuck in a very specific, vicious loop. First up is hypervigilance. You're just constantly scanning the room for any signs they might be upset. Next is shutdown. This is a state of learned helplessness, where you start feeling like absolutely nothing you do is right. And finally, cognitive dissonance. This is that profound, mind-bending confusion that happens when their cruelty gets mixed in with these intermittent, unpredictable bursts of kindness.
And this brings us to a really crucial point, understanding trauma bonds. This concept explains exactly why thoughtful people stay stuck in these situations far longer than anyone on the outside can comprehend. It's an attachment forged through intermittent reinforcement. It's kind of like a slot machine, where these random, unpredictable moments of kindness keep you hooked through a mix of fear and hope. And because of how your nervous system adapts to this roller coaster, leaving doesn't just feel logistically difficult. To your brain, it feels existentially threatening.
And all of this feeds directly into what we call the good person paradox. As an empath, you might genuinely believe that if you just love them enough, if you just stay patient enough and stay kind enough, they're eventually going to change. But here is the really hard truth. Love alone cannot cure entrenched, malignant traits. Believing that your patience will magically fix their spite is a trap. Without professional intervention and, crucially, mutual insight, the empath just slowly erodes. You lose your voice, your agency, and ultimately your joy.
But look, there is a way forward. Let's explore part four, compassionate assertiveness.
If you take nothing else away from this explainer, let it be this. You have to uncouple empathy from self-sacrifice. Compassion absolutely does not equal compliance. Now, the goal here is not for you to suddenly become ruthless or cold like the problematic personality. Not at all. The goal is to deploy compassionate assertiveness. You can fully understand their pain and their past while simultaneously and very firmly enforcing your own boundaries.
Psychologist Simon Baron-Cohen actually noted that empathy is a skill, not just a passive virtue. And that brings us to the concept of strategic empathy. Instead of using your understanding unconditionally to excuse their harm, you need to use it diagnostically.
Use it to predict their behavior so you can protect yourself. You're basically taking your greatest perceived weakness and flipping it into a tactical advantage for your own safety.
So how do we actually do that? Let's move to part 5, establishing your boundaries. To navigate this kind of asymmetry, you really need a clear roadmap. Starting with yourself, you have to prioritize self-trust. Remember, your feelings are data. They are not overreactions. You need to name the asymmetry out loud and practice some radical self-honesty. Now, for the relationship itself to actually survive, you must require absolute reciprocity. No exceptions. Set non-negotiable safety standards, insist on professional support, and above all else, you have to judge them purely by their consistent actions, not their empty emotional promises.
And if those relationship requirements simply cannot be met, we have to face a really painful truth. Sometimes the absolute most compassionate act for yourself, and honestly even for them, is walking away. And you don't do this out of spite or anger, but out of absolute clarity. Sometimes leaving is literally the only way to stop entrenching a toxic asymmetry. Because you have to remember, it's the lack of boundaries, not your beautiful capacity for empathy, that is the real problem here.
I want to leave you with one final question to really help you practice that radical self-honesty. Ask yourself, does this relationship make you feel more like yourself or less? Take some time to really sit with that. Thank you so much for exploring this deeply important dynamic with the For the Wise podcast. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the topics that help us live smarter, safer, and wiser. Catch you in the next one.